This hymn that I just played for you is Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee. This is a very well-known hymn that you might find in many, many hymnals. Hopefully it's in your church hymnal. And I'm going to provide a link in the description where if you don't have access to a hymnal, you can find this hymn at the website hymnary.org, which is a great resource that I recommend to you for finding many hymns. So I want to say something about why I'm making this video, and hopefully a few more videos, or maybe this will be a continuing series. I haven't posted in a while, but I wanted to make a series of videos playing hymns on the guitar. Okay, and I want to say a couple of reasons why I'm doing this. First of all, because I think this could be useful to many people, and who I think this could be useful for would be people in smaller churches, also people that host maybe a church in their own home, or study groups that meet in homes and they want to have a music time as well. This could work for somebody that's doing what I just did, just playing guitar and singing on their own, or whether you're just playing the guitar and accompanying other singers. Or it could also work with, if you play the guitar and you play along with a pianist and maybe even other band or praise team members in your church, in your church music team. So I like to find ways of bringing unity or bridging gaps where I see them. So I think this is an area where there's kind of a gap, at least in my view, is if you play guitar in a church setting, most of the time you're playing contemporary Christian songs. And a lot of those songs, the contemporary songs, are composed specifically with guitar in mind, guitar riffs, guitar-friendly keys. If your church does hymns, there's a good chance that the guitarist may not play on those hymns, or there are arrangements that are specifically done that are okay to do. But if you just pick up a hymnal and you look at the music like a pianist would see the music in a hymnal and play from that, it would be tricky for a guitarist. I think it's tricky for me to play guitar with the way that hymns are presented in a hymnal. Tricky, but not necessarily impossible. And I think besides bridging that gap of trying to make things more unified in your and my church music context, the other thing that this could do is really challenge some guitarists to grow in your skills and in your knowledge of music. I'm going to talk about some things to do with music theory and things that are kind of unique to hymns that you may not necessarily encounter, or at least not as much, if you play guitar only on contemporary praise and worship type songs. So that's why I'm making this video. Tell me if you think some of this resonates with you, or if you think a series, an ongoing series with videos such as this one, may be helpful to you. I'm gonna try to include here an image of a chord sheet that I've made for this hymn, and feel free to screen capture it, and save it for your own use if you want to. And this chord sheet that I've made would work if you're playing along with a pianist, if they are using the hymn music from the link that I provide in the description as well, from Hymnary. Okay, that's kind of a disclaimer that I have to say is hymnals vary, and if there may be other hymnals that have this song in a different key. There may be a hymnal that has this song in the same key, but with a different harmonization, and this chord sheet that I've worked up may not work in that case. So, I thought about whether I should set up a little website where you give me your email address and I give you the free PDF, the thing that everybody does these days. But I'm not going to do that because, well, it's a little bit of trouble to set up a website like that. And the other thing is, a resource like that has kind of a limited use. So rather than giving you the resource, I want to give you some ideas, maybe some principles that you can use to see what works in your own situation. Okay, so now I'm going to say something about the chords that I'm using in this hymn, and feel free to go back and see how I was playing it. Okay, I know that wasn't a perfect performance, but I'm in the key of G major, and I'm using this chord as my main G chord. This is actually technically a G open fifth, because there's no B, there's no third. So all that you're hearing is G's and D's. This could be a G major chord, but I don't like that third down at the bottom there. It seems a little muddy to me. So I just mute the second string by touching it gently with my finger, the one that's pushing down on the E string. So this is my G chord. This is my D chord. Hopefully you know this shape, this D shape. Okay, you might have noticed that I did this with my thumb. And if you know something about guitar, you would know that that is not good technique. Okay, that's bad technique. I'm doing it to mute the lower strings. If I don't do that, I might get a little bit messier sound with the A at the bottom, and that's not necessarily what I want. I just want to hear this D on the bottom. When I do this, by the way, even though I know it's bad technique, I keep my thumb as relaxed as I can. I don't have a grip of death around the neck of the guitar. I'm using only enough strength to push down the strings that I need to push down for the chord, and the thumb, I'm just gently wrapping it around enough to mute those lower strings. So I'm breaking the rules, but there's a reason for it. That's what I'm saying. G, D. Here's another chord. I'm using the top 4 strings with only pushing down this note, the G on the E string, and the other 3 strings open. That's a G major over D. D on the bass, and then a G major chord. G over D. Okay, that's a chord that you may not be familiar with, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. That's G over D, D again, G, C. This is probably a C shape that you're familiar with. You probably know this shape. Only thing I'm changing is I'm playing a G at the top instead of the open E string. Instead of that, I'm doing this. G over D again. D, G, D, G over D, D, G over D, D, B major. Okay, you may have learned this chord such as this. Okay, I'm doing the same thing except I'm barring here with my index finger and I'm barring here with my pinky finger. But it's the same B major chord. Then E minor. Okay, Okay, this is the E minor shape that everybody knows. I'm just adding this G on the top, A major, D major. And the last line is similar to the second line. G over D again. Okay, when I said the last line, please refer to that image that I showed earlier. So those are the chords, okay, that I'm using. So something I want to say about the use of chords in the hymns as they're presented in a hymnal that I think is challenging for guitarists, it is for me, compared to the chords that we normally play in a contemporary praise and worship setting, is that not all the chords are in root position. Okay, so root position means that the bass note is the root of the chord. This is a root position chord because the G is on the bass and it's a G chord. This is a root position D chord if I omit the lower two strings because the D is in the bass and D is the root of the chord. But this is not a root position chord. This G over D, the bass note is not the root note. So this is what's called a chord inversion. Okay? Chord inversion. In this hymn that I'm presenting today, that's the only chord inversion that I'm using, but there are many frequent chord inversions in hymns. Okay? And I think as a guitarist, I think it's good to learn about that. There's more than one way to play a chord. For example, this is a G. This is a G over B. Almost the same thing. That's a chord inversion. Okay, in contemporary songs, this is a very common movement. Or you might have a D over F sharp, that's a chord inversion. Okay, so chord inversions, it is something that you encounter in contemporary praise and worship songs, but just not as much as you do in the old hymns, which is, I think it's profitable for a guitarist to try and learn something about inversions. Okay, then to say something brief also about the arrangement, about the way that I did the flow of the song, of the hymn. I used the fourth line, and again, please refer to the image that I showed earlier. I used the fourth line as an introduction and as an interlude. So, there's 4 lines to each verse. Joyful, joyful, da da da. That's the first line. Hearts unfold like flowers before thee. That's the second line. Third line, melt the clouds of sin and sadness. Okay, and then the fourth line. Giver of immortal gladness. Giver of immortal gladness. Fill us with the light of day. I use that chord progression, without the voice obviously, as the interlude in between the verses and as the introduction before I started. So that is, again, that's something that's very commonly done by pianists when they play a hymn in a church setting. And so whether you do a full line introduction or even 2 lines, that's also possible. You would just have to communicate with your pianists so you both agree where you're going to start to play the introduction and those interludes. Okay. Here's another reason why I want to do this series and give you this idea, plant this germ, so to speak, in your mind, is because I found that this is a way that I can present the hymn in a way that's somewhat fresh and different than the way that the church has heard it before. Okay, because with these chords and in this style, with this kind of bluegrass strumming pattern, I don't know how you do hymns at your church, but my guess is that that may be not the way that church members have heard some of these hymns before. And the nice thing is that you can add this newness, this stylistic freshness, let's say it that way, and the pianist can still play from the same hymn sheet music that they know how to play, because the pianist, if depending on how they've been trained or what experience they have, if you just say, hey, we're going to play this hymn in bluegrass style, and here's the chord sheet, okay? Guitarists are usually are accustomed to using chord sheets, but pianists maybe are not. And so again, bridging gaps, this is a way that two different types of musicians with different trainings and different ways of understanding music can work together in a way that they both help each other. And again, this is not perfect. There's a little bit of messiness with this idea because, like I said, there's variations among hymnals. This hymn may appear in different forms in different hymnals, and so this resource that I present here with the chord sheet may not work for you if it's in a different key or different harmonization. Conversely, it could work for you. Let's say that you found this hymn in the key of A flat in a different hymnal. That's possible. And if the chords work okay, then you could play all the same chords and put your capo on the first fret, and now you're in the key of A flat. So it has its usefulness, but it's limited usefulness depending. But more than that, I want to give you some ideas and principles for you to experiment and see how you can grow as a musician and how you can best serve in your particular environment. So please let me know in the comments if this kind of thing is helpful to you, if you want to see something more about this. If I continue this as a series, I could make a lot of videos like this, because there's a lot of hymns that I like to play here at my church, that I like to do similar things with hymns, like what I've presented in this video. But I don't want to just do it just to make the video. So I want to do it if it's helpful to people out there. So please give me some feedback. Tell me what's helpful about this video, what's not helpful, how I can encourage you and help you. Again, not to give you resources, because there's lots of resources. There's lots of people out there putting out resources for church musicians, and I'm just the one guy. I've got lots of things to do, so I don't know that I'm going to be creating resources, but I want to at least put some ideas out there, and let's have some conversation, okay? Let me know if this has blessed you and how I can bless you even more.